Bienvenidos, worldwide fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. Jaime En Fuego here, welcoming you to my namesake program, Enfuegotainment, once again for a Rapido Fuego review. You can just call me Fuego for short. Yes, I know that's a lot of Fuego in opening statements and so on and so forth, but we are talking none other than Clark Duke's directorial, producing, co-writing, starring, basically first big time into all of this, Arkansas, but they spell Arkansas with a skull in the middle, eh? So yeah, you know there's danger afoot probably. But really, despite preconceptions from initially coming into this film, I ended up enjoying it a lot more than I was anticipating. I like these sort of noir, crime, caper, you know, sort of things, and that's what this is. Yes, it's definitely one of those that worships at the throne of Tarantino, but as opposed to that being, you know, very LA at times, or, you know, whatever. This was actually, you know, with a title like Arkansas, and the fact that it was filmed, if I'm not mistaken, in Mobile, Arkansas, I don't know. It was filmed in Arkansas, and the fact that Duke is actually from Arkansas, that's where he was born. I mean, yeah, this was presumably, if he had all of those duties that I mentioned, a passion project for him, and it was based on a novel from 2009, and so yeah, I mean, he got some decent talent for this. You've got the other Hemsworth. No, it's not Thor. You've got Liam Hemsworth in this one, who has been, you know, kind of criticized a little bit. He's not terrible in this, but he is a little more one note than I would have liked. But Duke was unrecognizable initially for me, because I remember him from, like, you know, Children's Hospital and Kick-Ass, and both of the Hot Tub Time Machine movies, probably more so than anything Hot Tub Time Machine. I don't know why, but yeah, so he's been in tons of different things, and he's a younger comedian that is trying to just expand his horizons and do different stuff. He obviously grew the hair down a little bit, which is dope, although he's wearing the man bun, you know, throughout the predominance of it. That's debatable, but and there's a very amusing scene initially in the film where he's talking about kids who are bottle fed versus breast milk, and like there's so many mothers who don't actually breastfeed anymore, and so on and so forth, because it, you know, messes with breast sensitivity and all kinds of other weird things. But children grow to be the healthiest and the biggest and the strongest, according to this particular character, if you're a breastfed child, and he claims that that's why he's this shorter little inbred looking homie. And then you've got Hemsworth, who's like big and tall, and he's like, how about we call your mama and find out, because I guarantee you were sucking on those titties since day one. There is a southern charm of sorts to the humor. The chemistry between our two leads, though, yeah, it's not as endearing as it's supposed to be, and it really, there's a lot of time skipping that happens rather rapidly, especially in the third act, that's supposed to just like nail down and, you know, just make it seem that apparent that they got as close as they did over the course of all this drug smuggling that they do over the course of the film, and all of the weird situations that have transpired aside from that, you know, that have caused them hindrances and problems and stuff. I didn't really buy that, but really I mean, you know, Duke is not bad, though. I'm not here to nail on him. It's, you know, commendable that he's doing a different sort of role, so he's not terrible in that regard. There's also a love interest of his that I must admit I struggled a little bit to, you know, buy into just how it's plausible and all of that. But hey, you know, if you're forthright and with charm and you see it in the trailer, I mean, you know, anything is possible. But there's also another scene halfway through the film where there's discussion about infatuation versus marriage and stuff like that. So I mean, maybe it was in the back of the head of that character too. But once again, rapido review, not super spoiler or anything. I'm trying to keep this rather brief. Really, for me, I love seeing Vince Vaughn getting back into another one of these, like, organized crime, like just sort of rougher kind of films. And he had kind of done it with Dragged Across Concrete, and you know, before that with Brawl in Cell Block 99, and, you know, a few other times in his career. And I mean, hell, there was a while where he was being pigeonholed as a serial killer after Clay Pigeons, and pigeonholed after Clay Pigeons, and then the Psycho remake and whatnot, Gus Van Sant. But I just liked seeing him in the role of this, like, crime boss kind of guy. I dug this is broken down into some chapters, okay? And so the second chapter specifically, where you see him just trying to build his way up and make something better of his nefarious interactions, and, you know, just getting a little bit iller with his shit so to speak. Vince Vaughn just always brings it, man, you know, and there's some other reputable, you know, smaller players in this, you know, smaller not in their just prestige, I guess, but in their amount of screen time, you know, John Malkovich, Vivica A. Fox, both awesome actors in their respective rights. They're both in this. It's just much smaller roles, but Vince Vaughn does have a pretty leading role in this once he really gets going in it. We get his introduction in Chapter 2 with some flashback stuff, which is dope, and then from there on, it just proceeds accordingly and shows him going from the 80s to present day and what he's become with the Ascension, and then maybe kind of, you know, handing off certain duties but still being connected without spoiling too much. And Vaughn is great in this movie. And another thing that this film tries to do but doesn't always succeed within, regrettably, is it tries to add an emotional core and some heart. And one thing that Tarantino does is that he always goes for the more of the whimsy ultra violence, I guess, you know, where you're just like, wow, they just did that, and it's more lighthearted, whereas this does almost the opposite. It's not really that violent of a movie at all, and it tries to be a little more sentimental, especially with the love interest aspect that goes down, you know, with Clark's character and everything, with Duke's character. And Swin, I think his name is, if I recall correctly, but it felt a little overwrought. It felt kind of forced into the narrative as opposed to really, really making sense. But yeah, I mean, still not terribly done. I guess when you go in with these VOD expectations, these you know, oh, it's only at Redbox on home release, it didn't go into theaters. But once again, everything is changing in this current you know, filmmaking landscape, especially as far as release structuring goes, where yeah, South by Southwest SXSW premiere that never happened, and then it has to just get dumped onto the home platforms and stuff. And this is one that I could see in limited theatrical, you know, I mean, playing at some art house cinemas, and that's presumably what the course was going to be with the sort of talent that was assembled here. The score, while very, very good at times, so there's a nice selection of just this, like, Midwestern / Southern kind of, you know, drawly, folky, you know, C&W sort of stuff. And I love that form of music, despite the hair and the silliness and the appearance and the metal and punk and all the stuff that I grew to embrace as I got a little bit older. I love country western music. I love this, you know, sort of folky approach, and it works with the score, and it works with a lot of the other songs that they choose. But there is, I'm not sure if it's one particular musician or a group that contributed a significant amount of songs, and I can't even admit if I know they were originals or whatever. Like I said, Rapido Fuego review. I'm not doing like an extensive amount of research. This is just what I thought right after finishing watching this just a few minutes ago. There is an auto-tune function that is thrown on some of these very minimalistic, organ-driven, with a little bit of guitar sort of songs, and it really is off-putting. It's kind of trying to be like a modernistic take on it, I suppose, with those sort of production techniques, and, you know, having gone through, you know, getting a production degree, you know, many years ago, and then switching back to journalism. It's funny how things go full circle in that regard sometimes, but it didn't sound good to me, you know, the overlaying of the vocals with those particular sorts of effects. And yeah, I mean, this is a film that is definitely trying to meld older sensibilities with newer sensibilities, so I can understand why, you know, that would be a thing here, but not a bad film. You know, one that I've watched so much in the midst of this self-quarantining and, you know, just not having time to do a whole lot else. And Arkansas is definitely one that I'm not regretful I spent the near 2 hours for. And the pacing wasn't terrible either, you know, at a near 2 hour mark. It didn't drag as much as I thought it was going to, although I will say the pacing in the third act, whereas it started very intriguingly in the first act, second act with the flashback to, or chapter I should say, with Vince Vaughn, you know, going and learning about him. Then the film starts to ramp up as we get past the midpoint, and that's where a lot of details, and it felt almost more like montagey in the fact that big things were occurring and they were happening a lot more quickly, and so they lost their resonance in that regard. But as a whole, I will still say this was a bueno film. This was a good film. This is very strictly 3-star status, 3 Fuego Fireball status, but I will give Arkansas 3 out of 5. It was actually enjoyable, more so than I was expecting. Sometimes the burden of expectation or the lack thereof works to a film's advantage, as it did here. So I've been Jaime En Fuego. Y'all can find moi on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube, where I do primarily comedic stuff, fantasy, sci-fi, the comic book, Star Wars, all kinds of stuff like that. Animated Mondays, Comic Book Wednesdays, Retro Fuego Thursdays, where I look back at films that I either saw and don't remember or have never experienced before, that at least have a few years removed, if not many decades more. And then lastly, youtube.com/The Horror Show channel is where you can also find me with my much larger audience, nearly 33,000 as opposed to less than the Jeezy that I have here. But here on Enfuegotainment, I'm like 10 or 15 subscribers, whatever the heck it is, from hitting that 1,000 mark. Many new capabilities as far as YouTube creativity, but The Horror Show, definitely jump over there and check it out as well if you like spectacular, scarific shizzle, film reviews, makeup tutorials, trailer reactions. We're hopefully going to be getting stuff back together here very soon because they're starting to cautiously lift the regulations on everybody being able to congregate, and so yeah, stay tuned for that, and definitely stay tuned here. Like, share, subscribe, much love, and until the Reel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, cinemigos, constant readers and viewers alike, but I'm hopeful that we get to share more of this film palaver sooner rather than later, and until then, still kind of stay indoors as much as possible and use that time to watch more movies.